This story is inspired by true events, but all names and details have been changed to protect the identity of those involved. Small towns have long memories, and even longer tongues. In the heart of rural America, where everyone knows your name, your business, and the color of your front door, one young woman's life was shattered in a single night. A whisper became a rumor. A rumor became a scandal. And before she could defend herself, she was branded a disgrace, shunned by her neighbors, and cast out by the very man who was supposed to protect her, her own father. For 20 long years, she built a new life far away. The pain never left, but neither did the fire in her heart. She reinvented herself, stronger, wealthier, and wiser, yet deep inside, a storm was brewing. She had unfinished business in the place that had tried to erase her. When she finally returned, driving a sleek black car down the same dusty main street that once saw her leave in tears, the air in town seemed to shift. Old secrets stirred, doors closed, and behind every forced smile was a pair of eyes watching, calculating, wondering why she had come back. Some thought she wanted revenge, others believed she had forgiven. But the truth? It was far more complicated and far more dangerous. So, as we begin this journey, I want you to picture your own hometown, the streets you know by heart, the people who've known you since childhood. Now imagine being forced to leave in shame, only to return decades later with power in your hands. Before we go on, tell me in the comments, what city and state are you watching from? The late afternoon sun hung low over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the dusty main street. The town hadn't changed much in 20 years, the same old diner with its flickering neon sign, the same white church with a steeple reaching toward the sky, and the same tired brick storefronts whose paint had begun to peel. But that day, something was different. There was a hum in the air, an invisible current running through the town. It started with the sound of tires crunching over gravel. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. From the far end of the street, a sleek black Cadillac slowly rolled into view, its polished body reflecting the fading sunlight like liquid obsidian. The windows were tinted, concealing the figure inside, but the townsfolk could feel her presence before they saw her. The car eased to a stop right in front of Miller's Diner, the unofficial center of Willow Creek gossip. As the engine purred to silence, every eye was fixed on the door. A moment later, it opened with a soft click. Her heels touched the ground first, sharp, confident, the kind of sound that announces authority without a single word. Then came the rest of her, Sarah Whitmore. Time seemed to slow. 20 years ago, she had left this street in tears, her face burning with shame as whispers followed her like a swarm of bees. Back then, she was just a scared 18-year-old girl in a faded dress, but now, she was unrecognizable. Her hair, once wild and sun-bleached, was now sleek and styled. A tailored cream-colored coat hugged her frame, and a diamond glinted on her hand when she reached for her sunglasses. She removed them slowly, revealing eyes that scanned the crowd with a calm, almost predatory precision. Inside the diner, Margaret Hale, queen of the town's rumor mill, pressed her coffee cup to her lips but didn't drink. Her eyes narrowed, calculating. Beside her, Tommy Lewis, who once swore he'd marry Sarah before the scandal, shifted uncomfortably in his seat. On the sidewalk, a few people murmured, "Is that her?" and "I thought she'd never come back." Others stood frozen, their memories pulling them back to that summer, the summer of the scandal. Sarah didn't acknowledge anyone at first. She simply stood there, letting the silence grow heavy, letting them take in the transformation. The warm breeze carried the faint scent of magnolia blossoms, but to Sarah, the air smelled of history, sweet, but with a bite of bitterness underneath. She finally spoke, her voice low yet carrying across the street. "Well," she said, her lips curling into a faint, knowing smile, "looks like Willow Creek hasn't changed a bit." Somewhere down the block, the church bells chimed the hour, breaking the moment. Sarah turned toward Whitmore's Hardware, her father's store, its green awning still hanging lopsided over the door. Her gaze lingered there just a second too long, her jaw tightening ever so slightly. She stepped back into the car, and with a graceful wave of her hand to the driver, the Cadillac glided away toward the Whitmore estate, the same grand, white-columned house where she'd been told she was no longer welcome. Behind her, the whispers began again, louder this time. "Why is she back? She's probably here to stir up trouble. I heard she married some billionaire." But Margaret Hale knew better. She could see it in Sarah's eyes. This wasn't a social visit. Sarah Whitmore had returned with a purpose. And in Willow Creek, purpose was dangerous. As the Cadillac disappeared over the hill, the sunset bathed the town in gold. To an outsider, it might have looked like a peaceful southern evening. But those who knew the history could feel it. The storm had come back to Willow Creek, and it was wearing heels. 20 years ago, the summer heat in Willow Creek was merciless that year. The air felt heavy, thick enough to choke on, and even the cicadas seemed to scream louder than usual. 18-year-old Sarah Whitmore stood barefoot on the wooden porch of her father's house, staring out toward the main street. She could hear the voices, not loud, but sharp, like the sting of wasps. The rumors had started only 3 days earlier. No one ever told her exactly who began them, but by the time they reached her ears, they had grown wild and ugly. Words like shameful and disgrace clung to her name like mud on white fabric. The whispers followed her everywhere: the grocery store, the church, the diner. Neighbors who used to smile now looked through her as if she were invisible. But the worst cut came from inside her own home. Her father, James Whitmore, stood in the doorway that evening, his face as hard as the oak trees in the yard. "You've brought shame on this family, Sarah," he said, his voice low but sharp enough to wound. "I can't have you under this roof anymore." Her mother sat silently in the corner, eyes downcast, her hands twisting the fabric of her apron. Sarah searched her face for any sign of support, but there was nothing, just a cold, hollow distance. "You're throwing me out?" Sarah's voice cracked. Her father didn't flinch. "Pack your things. By morning, you're gone." That night, Sarah's suitcase was small, just enough for a few clothes and a tattered photo of her and her younger sister on the Ferris wheel at the county fair. She didn't sleep. She sat on her bed, watching the shadows crawl across the walls, listening to the distant bark of a dog and the hum of cicadas. Every sound felt like a countdown. When morning came, the sun rose red, casting the street in a strange, almost ominous light. Sarah stepped outside with her suitcase, wearing the only dress she owned that wasn't frayed at the edges. The neighbors were already out, pretending to sweep porches or water plants, but their eyes were fixed on her. Margaret Hale was there, of course, leaning against the post in front of the diner, her lips curled in satisfaction. She whispered something to the woman beside her, and they both laughed softly. Sarah's father stood on the porch, arms crossed, his face unreadable. "Don't come back here until you've learned what decency means," he said. Her chest tightened, but she refused to cry. Crying in front of them would be giving them what they wanted. She lifted her chin, forcing her feet to move toward the bus stop at the edge of town. Each step felt heavier than the last, but she kept walking, suitcase bumping against her leg. The bus arrived in a cloud of dust. As she climbed the steps, she glanced back one last time. The town looked small from there, the church steeple, the hardware store, the diner, but the weight of its judgment loomed larger than life. The driver, an older man with kind eyes, asked, "Where you headed, miss?" Sarah hesitated. "Anywhere but here." The door closed with a hiss, and the bus pulled away, the rows of wooden houses sliding out of view. The air inside smelled faintly of diesel and coffee, and the hum of the engine drowned out the voices in her head. Still, she could feel the burn of the town's eyes on her back, as if Willow Creek itself was watching her go. She didn't know then how long she would be gone. She didn't know that she would build a life that would one day bring her back to that same dusty street. All she knew was that she was leaving with nothing, and somehow, that had to be enough. As the fields rolled by outside the window, Sarah pressed her hand against the glass. The coolness grounded her, steadied her. Somewhere deep inside, beneath the hurt and humiliation, a small flame still burned. They had taken her home from her. But they hadn't taken her will. Building a new life, the bus took Sarah as far as Birmingham, Alabama, a city that felt like another world compared to the slow, suffocating rhythm of Willow Creek. The streets buzzed with noise, cars honking, vendors shouting, music drifting from bars, and for the first time in days, no one knew her name. No one cared about her past. But freedom had a cost. Sarah arrived with $22 in her purse and a single suitcase. For weeks, she slept in the cheapest boarding house she could find, sharing a bathroom with strangers and learning to ignore the sounds of arguments and slammed doors in the middle of the night. She found work as a waitress in a greasy diner near the bus depot, where the smell of frying bacon clung to her clothes and the tips barely covered her rent. Still, she pushed forward. Every shift, she studied the customers. The way the businessmen in crisp suits commanded respect, the way confident women walked into a room and owned it. She noticed their clothes, their speech, their habits. She began to imitate them in small ways, ironing her thrift store dresses, practicing new words she'd overheard, and forcing herself to make eye contact when she spoke. One rainy evening, while serving coffee to a table of 3 sharply dressed women, Sarah overheard them discussing a secretarial course at a local business school. The tuition was more than she could imagine affording, but that night, she began saving every dollar she could. She cut her meals in half, took extra shifts, and sold the little jewelry she had left. 6 months later, she was sitting in a classroom, pen in hand, determined to learn everything from typing to bookkeeping. She was a quick study, quicker than most, and her instructors noticed. By the time she graduated, she had not only skills but also connections, people who saw her potential and offered her opportunities. Her first real job was at a small law firm, answering phones and managing appointments. It wasn't glamorous, but it was a step up from the diner, and Sarah treated it like a stepping stone. She stayed late, learned how the attorneys negotiated deals, and paid close attention to how money moved from one hand to another. Within 5 years, she had moved to Atlanta, trading her tiny boarding room for a modest apartment in the city. She worked for larger firms, earned a reputation for efficiency and discretion, and eventually caught the attention of Richard Campbell, a wealthy investor who offered her a position as his personal assistant. Working for Richard was like entering another universe. She traveled with him to New York, Miami, even Los Angeles. She dined in restaurants where a single meal cost more than her first month's rent. And she listened, always listened. She learned about investments, real estate, and the art of making people believe in your vision. Richard liked her ambition. He gave her responsibilities beyond her title, letting her manage small projects, then larger ones. Soon, she was making investments of her own, smart ones, and watching her savings grow into something real. By her mid-30s, Sarah was no longer the girl who left Willow Creek in shame. She was a woman of influence, moving in circles that would have once been unimaginable. But even as she stood on balconies overlooking city skylines, dressed in silk and diamonds, she would sometimes close her eyes and see the dusty streets of her hometown. The thought didn't always hurt. Sometimes it fueled her. She had rebuilt herself piece by piece, and now she had the resources, the confidence, and the power that had been denied to her. She never told anyone the full story, but deep down, Sarah knew there was unfinished business in Willow Creek. And so, on quiet nights in her apartment, she would pull out that old photo, the one of her and her sister on the Ferris wheel, and run her fingers over the faded edges. She'd whisper to herself, one day, she would go back. One day, they would see her not as a disgrace, but as a force. And one day, they would regret underestimating Sarah Whitmore. Whispers in the diner. Miller's Diner had been the beating heart of Willow Creek for as long as anyone could remember. The coffee was strong, the pie was sweet, and the gossip was free, though it often came with a bite sharper than lemon meringue. On an ordinary Thursday afternoon, the place would be half empty, with a few farmers taking their lunch break and the regulars chatting over refills. But today was different. Every booth was occupied. Forks clinked softly against plates, but the conversations were hushed, words slipping from mouth to ear in tones just low enough to make the listener lean in. "I heard she came in a Cadillac," said Linda Grace, the school secretary, leaning forward so far her elbows rested in her mashed potatoes. "Black, shiny, and with a driver." "That's not all," whispered Tommy Lewis, who'd been nursing the same cup of coffee for nearly an hour. "I saw her step out myself. Didn't even look nervous. Just calm. Like she owned the place." Across the aisle, Margaret Hale stirred her coffee slowly, letting the spoon clink against the ceramic. She didn't need to raise her voice to command attention. People simply leaned closer when she spoke. "Of course she looked calm," Margaret said. "That's what women do when they're hiding something." The table fell silent, waiting for her to elaborate. "She left this town in disgrace," Margaret continued, her eyes narrowing. "And now she comes back looking like she walked out of a magazine. You tell me, where does a girl like that get the kind of money she's flashing?" "She could have married rich," Linda offered. "Or blackmailed someone," Tommy muttered under his breath. From behind the counter, Carol Miller, the owner's daughter, rolled her eyes. "Maybe she just worked for it. Ever think of that?" Margaret gave a slow, knowing smile. "Nobody leaves Willow Creek the way she did and comes back for good reasons. Mark my words, she's here for something. And we're all going to find out soon enough." The bell above the diner door jingled, and heads swiveled in unison. It wasn't Sarah, but Sheriff Ed Dalton, who had a habit of walking in at exactly the wrong, or right, time. He tipped his hat to the room, then slid into a booth near the window. Carol brought him a coffee without asking. "You hear the news?" she said in a low voice. Ed took a slow sip before answering. "If you mean Sarah Whitmore, yeah. Folks been talking about nothing else since she rolled into town." Carol leaned in, lowering her voice even further. "Do you think she's trouble?" The sheriff's eyes drifted toward the street outside. "Trouble's a funny thing," he said finally. "Sometimes it comes looking for you. Sometimes you invite it back." His words seemed to settle over the room like a shadow. People went back to their meals, but the air felt thicker somehow, like everyone was holding their breath. Margaret, of course, wasn't done. "I heard she's staying at the Whitmore estate," she said, her voice just loud enough to carry. "Can you imagine? After all that happened, she walks right back into her father's house." "She's not walking," Tommy corrected. "She's driving." "Big difference." A ripple of laughter went around the table, but it was nervous laughter, the kind people use when they're trying to hide that they're unsettled. Outside, the sound of a distant engine rumbled through the still air. The conversation stuttered, then stopped entirely. Through the diner's large front windows, a black Cadillac glided past, its tinted windows betraying nothing. Every head turned to follow it. For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of the car's engine as it disappeared down the road toward the Whitmore estate. Margaret set her coffee cup down with a decisive clink. "There," she said. "That's not just a visit. That's a statement." No one argued. Because in Willow Creek, when someone like Sarah Whitmore came back after 20 years, it wasn't just a homecoming. It was the opening move in a game the whole town would be forced to play. The first confrontation. The Whitmore estate sat on the edge of town, where the paved road turned to gravel and the magnolia trees arched overhead like sentinels. The house was the same as Sarah remembered: tall white columns, wide porch, paint in perfect condition, yet it felt smaller. Maybe it was her. Maybe she'd grown too big for the place in more ways than one. The Cadillac rolled to a stop at the foot of the driveway. Sarah stepped out slowly, her heels clicking against the gravel. The air smelled faintly of cut grass and something older, something familiar, the scent of the soil after a summer rain. She took her time walking up the steps. The wood creaked in the same places it had 20 years ago. Her hand hovered over the front door for a moment before she pushed it open without knocking. The hallway was dim, the air cool. Family photographs lined the walls, though Sarah noticed some gaps where certain frames had been removed. Her footsteps echoed as she crossed into the living room. Her father was there, seated in his old leather armchair by the window. James Whitmore looked older, his hair thinner, his shoulders stooped, but the steel in his eyes was the same. He didn't stand when she entered. "Sarah." His voice was flat, without warmth. "Hello, Father." A pause stretched between them, thick as molasses. "You didn't call," he said. "I didn't think you'd answer." He studied her, his gaze sharp, traveling from the diamond on her hand to the tailored coat she wore. "I hear you've been making quite an entrance in town." "People talk," she said with a faint smile. "They always have." His jaw tightened. "You didn't have to come back." "Yes," she said softly, stepping closer. "I did." There was a long silence. Outside, the cicadas sang, and a distant car engine rumbled past. "You left this house in disgrace," James said finally. "That hasn't changed." Sarah's eyes narrowed, though her voice stayed calm. "The way I remember it, I didn't leave. I was thrown out." His fingers curled against the armrest of his chair. "You made your choices. And so did you," she replied, the faintest edge creeping into her tone. "You believed lies over your own daughter. You turned your back on me." For the first time, his eyes flickered, not with guilt, but something more complicated, something he didn't want her to see. "I'm not here to fight," she said, though the steel in her voice betrayed her. "I just wanted to see the place, see you." "And then what?" he asked. "You expect me to forget the past?" "I expect nothing," she said, turning toward the door. "But the past has a way of catching up to people. Even in Willow Creek." She walked away slowly, each step deliberate, her heels striking the hardwood like a clock counting down. Before she reached the door, his voice stopped her. "You're stirring up trouble, Sarah. People will notice." She turned her head slightly, just enough to glance at him over her shoulder. "Good," she said. "Let them." Then she was gone, the door closing behind her with a soft but final click. James sat alone in the dim room, his hand resting on the arm of his chair, his knuckles white. Outside, the hum of the Cadillac faded into the distance, leaving only the sound of the cicadas, and the gnawing sense that her return was not a passing event, but the beginning of something he could no longer control. Allies and enemies. Willow Creek had a way of remembering everything, every slight, every kindness, every scandal. Sarah Whitmore knew that better than anyone. As she walked down Main Street, the sun warming her shoulders, she could feel the weight of the town's gaze, heavy and unyielding. Some faces softened when they saw her. Jenny Harper, who had been Sarah's closest friend as a girl, approached hesitantly from the side of the street. Her hair was streaked with gray, and her eyes carried the faint lines of years spent worrying about everyone else. "Sarah, I can't believe you're back," she said softly. Sarah smiled, though there was a sharpness beneath it. "Neither can I," she replied, hugging Jenny briefly. The contact was brief but charged, a reconnection that spoke volumes without words. Jenny pulled back, glancing around nervously. "Listen, there are people who still remember what happened. And they're not happy about you returning." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "Do tell." Before Jenny could answer, a group of older men at the corner of the street nudged each other, whispering under their breaths. Their eyes followed Sarah as if she were a storm cloud moving over the town, inevitable and unstoppable. "You should be careful," Jenny said. "Margaret Hale has been organizing things. People are tense." Sarah's lips curved into a faint smile. "Tense is exactly how I like them." They walked together toward Willow Creek Market, where Sarah ran into another old acquaintance, Eddie Thompson, the mechanic who had once mended her bicycle after she fell off in the town square. Eddie's grin was wide and genuine, though there was a flicker of unease in his eyes. "You're back for real," he said, shaking her hand firmly. "And I gotta admit, the town's been buzzing like a hornet's nest since word got out." "I know," Sarah replied. "I've been listening. Every whisper, every look." "Good," Eddie said. "Means they're paying attention. Means they're afraid. But remember, some of them will come at you sideways. Keep your eyes open." Sarah nodded. She had expected nothing less. Willow Creek was a town divided, some still loyal to her, some loyal to the idea of her disgrace. And the people in power were masters at manipulation. Later that evening, Sarah visited the diner, the unofficial hub of town conversation. Margaret Hale was already there, seated in her usual booth, a smirk on her lips. "Well, if it isn't Willow Creek's prodigal daughter," Margaret said, voice dripping with condescension. "I'd almost applaud your effort if it weren't so transparent." Sarah slid into the booth across from her, calm and deliberate. "And what is so transparent?" she asked, letting the question hang in the air like a challenge. Margaret leaned forward slightly. "You think you can waltz back into town after 20 years and expect everything to be different? People don't forget. They don't forgive." Sarah's eyes glimmered, and she let a faint, controlled laugh escape. "Oh, I'm not here to be forgiven," she said. "I'm here to be seen. That's all. The rest is up to them." Around the diner, a few heads turned, listening. Some frowned, others whispered. Sarah could feel the ripple she had caused, small waves that would build into a tide. As she left the diner, the air was thick with the smell of coffee and baked bread. Jenny and Eddie met her outside, their presence a reminder that not everyone had turned against her. They were her allies, her anchors in a town built on judgment. Yet as the sun dipped behind the magnolia trees, casting long shadows over the street, Sarah knew the enemies were waiting, silent and patient. They would test her, push her, try to make her leave. But Sarah Whitmore was no longer the girl who had cried her way out of town. She had allies, she had resources, and most importantly, she had a plan. And Willow Creek, well, Willow Creek was about to learn that when Sarah returned, nothing would ever be the same. Digging into the past, the quiet of Willow Creek at night was deceptive. Streetlights flickered over cracked sidewalks, and the wind whispered through the magnolia trees as if carrying secrets only the town itself could understand. Sarah Whitmore walked briskly along the familiar paths, her mind replaying every conversation, every glance, every whispered accusation from her past. She had returned not just to be seen, but to uncover the truth. Her first stop was the old library, a small brick building tucked between the post office and the barber shop. The librarian, Mrs. Keene, remembered her immediately. "Sarah Whitmore," she said, voice tinged with surprise. I didn't expect to see you back." Sarah smiled politely. "I need to look through some old town records," she said. "Birth certificates, property deeds, newspaper clippings, anything from 20 years ago." Mrs. Keene hesitated, then led her to a quiet corner. The smell of aged paper filled the air, mingling with the faint aroma of dust and ink. Sarah's fingers traced the spines of the records, pausing on old editions of the Willow Creek Gazette. She scanned the headlines, county fairs, church events, fundraisers, and then, finally, the scandal that had changed her life forever. She found the article, "Young Sarah Whitmore Expelled Amid Controversy." The word stung, as though the town itself had reached through time to remind her of every humiliation. She read carefully, noting the names mentioned, the sources of the rumors, and the subtle innuendo that had been passed off as fact. But one thing stood out. There were gaps in the record, missing names, vague accounts, and conflicting versions of the story. Sarah realized immediately that the town had actively obscured certain details. Someone had been protecting themselves, or someone else. Her next visit was to Tommy Lewis, her former friend who had been present that night. He met her on the porch of his small home, fidgeting with a wrench in his hands. "I don't know why you're digging," he said quietly. "Some things are better left buried." Sarah's gaze was steady. "I don't do well with better left buried. I need to know what really happened. Who started the rumor? Why did my father believe it?" Tommy swallowed hard. "You were set up. Margaret Hale. She spread the stories, made sure the town believed them. And she had help. A few influential families wanted you out of the way for reasons I don't fully understand." Sarah's heart raced, but she remained calm. "And my father?" Tommy hesitated. He didn't know the full truth, but he also didn't stop it. Maybe he wanted to believe it. Maybe he was too proud to admit he'd been fooled. The weight of the revelation pressed down on her, a mix of vindication and sorrow. She had been wronged, not just by the town, but by those closest to her. And now she understood the stakes. Margaret Hale and her allies had hidden the truth, and some of them were still in positions of power. Over the following days, Sarah methodically pieced together the past. She visited former neighbors, quietly questioned old teachers, and cross-referenced the town records. Each clue painted a picture more intricate and darker than she had imagined. She discovered financial deals, secret alliances, and favors exchanged behind closed doors. Every revelation added fuel to the fire she had been nurturing for 20 years. Yet, for all the anger and betrayal, there was also a sense of empowerment. Knowing the truth gave her leverage, a way to move through the town not as a victim, but as someone who understood the strings pulling at everyone else. One evening, standing on the balcony of the Whitmore estate, she looked out over the town bathed in the soft glow of sunset. The same streets that had humiliated her now lay before her like a board waiting for the next move in a game she intended to win. The past had been dark, filled with lies and betrayals. But now, armed with knowledge, Sarah Whitmore was ready. Ready to confront those who had wronged her. Ready to rewrite her story. And ready to ensure that Willow Creek would never see her the same way again. The wind stirred the magnolia leaves, whispering a promise. The reckoning had begun. The truth comes out. The evening air in Willow Creek was heavy with anticipation. Word had spread quietly at first, a conversation in the diner, a passing comment at the post office. But by sunset, nearly everyone knew Sarah Whitmore was uncovering the truth. The town hall had been the center of gossip for decades, and that night, it became the stage for revelation. Sarah requested a meeting under the guise of discussing town developments. Margaret Hale and a handful of influential families were present, their faces masks of polite curiosity, but tension radiated from every corner. Sarah entered, confident and composed, her heels clicking sharply against the wooden floor. She paused in the center of the room, letting her gaze sweep across the crowd. Every whispered accusation, every skeptical look she had endured, culminated in this moment. "I've spent the last 20 years building a life," she began, her voice steady, echoing against the high ceilings. "But I never forgot what happened here, in this town, in this room. Lies were spread, trust was broken, and people I loved were misled." A murmur ran through the crowd, a ripple of unease that Sarah let linger. "I have reviewed town records, spoken to witnesses, and pieced together the events of that night," she continued. "What I found is simple: I was set up. The rumors that destroyed my life were orchestrated by people who wanted me out of the way, people who manipulated my family and tarnished my reputation to serve their own interests." Gasps and soft whispers filled the room. Margaret Hale's lips tightened, her eyes narrowing. "You," Sarah said, pointing directly at her former friend-turned-rival, "and your allies orchestrated a campaign of lies that humiliated me publicly, hurt my family, and nearly destroyed my future. And yet, here you sit, acting as if nothing happened." Margaret's smile was gone. She opened her mouth to speak but found no words. Around the room, others shifted uncomfortably, realizing the gravity of Sarah's words. "I also discovered," Sarah continued, producing a stack of documents, "that certain families engaged in secret deals to ensure I had no chance to defend myself. They exploited fear, tradition, and pride to control the narrative. And my father," her eyes softened, but her voice remained firm. "He was misled, and in his pride, he refused to see the truth until now." James Whitmore, seated stiffly at the back, remained silent. His face was pale, eyes flicking to Sarah, the weight of realization slowly settling in. A young councilman stood, voice quivering. "Sarah, this is serious. Are you sure?" "I've checked and double-checked every detail," she said. "The truth has always been here, hidden in plain sight. But I've brought it into the light." The room was a mix of shock, anger, and guilt. Long-held secrets were unraveling, reputations teetering on the edge. Sarah's calm authority contrasted sharply with the chaos in their minds. "I'm not here to ruin anyone," Sarah said, letting the tension settle slightly. "I'm here to ensure the truth is acknowledged. Justice isn't revenge, it's recognition. And recognition is overdue." Whispers turned to quiet conversations, some defensive, others apologetic. People looked at each other, realizing that their complicity had consequences. The power dynamics in the room shifted subtly but unmistakably. Outside, the wind stirred the magnolia trees, rustling leaves like a gentle applause. Sarah turned, her eyes scanning the room one last time. The city she had left broken now knew she had returned not as a victim, but as a force of clarity. And in that clarity, the balance of Willow Creek was changing. Some would resist, some would bend, and some would never recover from the truth she had unearthed. Sarah's lips curved into a faint, satisfied smile. The storm she had brought back to Willow Creek had broken, and the town could no longer ignore it. The reckoning wasn't over. But the first, irreversible crack had appeared in the foundations of deceit. The choice the sun was low over Willow Creek, casting long shadows across the streets Sarah had once fled. The town seemed smaller in the golden light, yet heavier, as if the weight of past secrets pressed down on every roof and sidewalk. Sarah Whitmore walked slowly, the soft crunch of gravel beneath her heels echoing in her mind like a metronome marking a decision she had long postponed. For weeks, the revelations she had exposed had rippled through the town. Some people apologized quietly, others withdrew, their pride shattered. Margaret Hale had retreated into a defensive posture, her once confident smirk replaced by thin-lipped tension. And her father, James Whitmore, sat in the house with a silence that spoke more than words ever could. Sarah had a choice now, the choice she had imagined countless times during her years away. Revenge would be satisfying, intoxicating, even poetic. She could expose every misdeed, ensure Margaret's humiliation matched her own from 20 years ago, and dominate the town with the authority she had earned. But as she stood outside the Whitmore estate, feeling the breeze rustle the magnolia leaves, another option surfaced: redemption. Not for her, for she no longer needed absolution, but for the town itself. For her father, who had been manipulated and proud. For Jenny Harper, who had remained loyal despite everything. For the neighbors who had whispered lies yet still carried faint traces of innocence. Her hand rested lightly on the iron gate, tracing its cold lines. She remembered the girl who had been thrown out, barefoot and humiliated, her suitcase dragging behind her. That girl had survived. That girl had thrived. And now, the woman she had become could either tear down or build up. Inside the house, James Whitmore was waiting. He didn't speak immediately. He only gestured toward the porch chair across from him. Sarah sat, the wood cool beneath her, and the air filled with the quiet tension of unspoken words. "I've seen what you've done," James said finally. His voice was rough, aged by years and regret. "You've uncovered everything. You could destroy me, everyone." Sarah met his eyes steadily. "I could," she said. "But I'm not here to destroy. I'm here to set things right." "Right?" he asked, skepticism lacing every syllable. "After everything?" "Yes," she said. "The truth has been revealed. That's the first step. The second is up to me. And the second step doesn't have to be revenge." A long silence followed. The wind outside swirled through the magnolia branches, rustling leaves like whispered counsel. Sarah's mind wandered through memories of betrayal, pain, and exile, and then to all she had achieved, all she had become. She felt the power in her hands, the satisfaction of control. And yet, she also felt the lightness that came from letting go of hatred, even for a moment. "I've spent 20 years planning my return," she said finally. "But planning to punish everyone for their mistakes, that's not who I am anymore. That girl who left Willow Creek, she needed revenge to survive. But the woman I am now, I choose a different path." James Whitmore's shoulders relaxed slightly, the first sign of relief he had shown in decades. You really mean that?" "I do," Sarah said. "I forgive. Not to forget, not to erase, but to free myself. And if anyone else wants to learn from what happened, that's their choice. I won't hold them down, but I won't let lies continue either." Outside, the sun dipped behind the horizon, bathing the town in soft, amber light. Sarah stood and walked to the edge of the porch, looking down the familiar streets. She could feel the town watching, waiting for her next move. But this time, she had chosen her move not out of anger, not out of fear, but out of clarity. The choice had been made. And with that choice, the final chapter of her return was set into motion. The reckoning had begun, not as vengeance, but as a reckoning of truth, resilience, and the quiet power of a life reclaimed. Sarah Whitmore breathed deeply, letting the cool evening air fill her lungs. The town might still whisper, still judge, still wonder. But she had already won the most important battle, over herself, her past, and the life she would shape from this moment forward. A new dawn. The morning sun rose over Willow Creek, painting the town in hues of gold and soft pink. The magnolia trees shimmered with dew, their petals glistening like tiny lanterns in the warm light. Sarah Whitmore stood on the porch of the Whitmore estate, breathing deeply, feeling the cool morning air fill her lungs. It was a new day, and the town felt different, lighter, yet still alive with the echoes of the past. She had chosen her path. Revenge had been tempting, sweet even, but she had embraced something stronger: clarity, justice, and the quiet power of walking with dignity. The town knew the truth now. Lies had been exposed, secrets revealed, and illusions shattered. But instead of destruction, there was a sense of balance, a chance for the people of Willow Creek to see themselves clearly, and perhaps, to grow. Her father, James Whitmore, had joined her on the porch, a tentative smile softening the lines of his weathered face. "I didn't understand before," he admitted, voice low but sincere. "I thought I was protecting you, but I see now. I failed." Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder, not in reproach but in recognition of the years lost. "We all failed in some way, Father. But the past is behind us. What matters now is what we do from here." Below, the town was stirring. People walked the streets, glanced at the Whitmore estate, whispered, nodded. Some faces were cautious, others curious. Jenny Harper waved from the market, Eddie Thompson gave a subtle thumbs up, and even Margaret Hale lingered at the corner, her expression unreadable, but not hostile. The town had survived the truth, and now, it had a chance to heal. Sarah descended the porch steps slowly, heels clicking against the wood. Each step was deliberate, measured, a rhythm of confidence and purpose. She walked through the streets, greeting old neighbors, acknowledging those who had been loyal, and offering a silent, powerful reminder to those who had faltered. She had returned, not to punish, but to reclaim her life. At the diner, a few regulars paused mid-conversation, watching her with a mixture of awe and respect. She smiled warmly, shaking hands, sharing brief words of encouragement. The whispers were no longer malicious, they were filled with curiosity and, in some cases, admiration. The sun climbed higher, warming her shoulders, and Sarah realized something profound. Willow Creek had not been just a town that humiliated her, it had been a crucible, shaping the strength she now carried. Every betrayal, every whispered lie, every tear shed alone had forged the woman she had become. She returned to the estate, standing once again on the porch. The wind stirred the magnolia leaves, their rustle like a gentle applause for her journey. She gazed down at the streets, at the people beginning their day, and felt a sense of completion. Not revenge, not anger, but triumph, the triumph of resilience, of wisdom, and of choosing power over pain. "Today is a new dawn," she whispered, almost to herself. "For me, for this town, and for everyone who learns that the past does not define them unless they allow it." Her father joined her once more, silent now, simply watching as the town awakened. The distance of 20 years had narrowed in moments of courage and clarity. And as Sarah stood there, sunlight glinting off the edges of her coat, she knew her story would be remembered, not for the scandal, nor the betrayal, but for the strength and grace with which she had returned. Willow Creek would never be the same. And neither would Sarah Whitmore. Echoes of Willow Creek months had passed since Sarah Whitmore's return to Willow Creek. The town, once heavy with judgment and whispers, had begun to breathe again. People moved through the streets with a newfound awareness, a subtle respect in their eyes when they spoke her name. She had not sought to dominate or punish, but her presence had reshaped the very rhythm of the community. Sarah herself had changed in ways no one could see but her. The anger and resentment that had driven her for 20 years had been replaced with a calm certainty. She moved through life with intention, choosing her battles carefully and investing her energy where it truly mattered, in growth, in connection, in creating something lasting. The Whitmore estate had become a place of quiet influence. Sarah opened a small community center in one wing of the property, offering programs for education, mentorship, and support. Children who might have been overlooked, adults seeking guidance, families navigating difficulties, all found a safe place under her watchful, compassionate eye. Her father, James, now older and humbler, spent his days quietly supporting her initiatives. The two shared a new bond, one built not on past mistakes or pride, but on mutual respect and the understanding that life could be rewritten even after years of regret. Margaret Hale, once Sarah's adversary, had retreated from public life, her schemes quietly exposed. Some in the town still felt tension when she walked by, but Sarah never interfered. The lesson had already been learned, and the balance of Willow Creek had shifted. Even the simple things in life felt sweeter. Morning walks along the streets she once fled, the warm scent of magnolias in bloom, laughter at Miller's diner, friendly nods from neighbors, all reminders that a town could heal, and a person could reclaim their story. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in shades of rose and gold, Sarah stood on the porch of the estate. She watched Willow Creek, her hometown, and allowed herself a quiet smile. The past had shaped her, yes, but it no longer defined her. She had chosen clarity over vengeance, resilience over despair, and in doing so, had rewritten not just her own story, but the story of the town itself. As the cicadas began their familiar chorus, Sarah whispered into the evening air, almost as if sharing a secret with the town itself, "This is only the beginning." Willow Creek would remember her, not as the girl who left in disgrace, but as the woman who returned, wiser, stronger, and unyielding. And Sarah Whitmore? She had finally come home.